So now it's my pleasure to introduce the panel to also build on some of the interesting comments that Ms. Hoven has made. So that's why I'd like to re-invite Ms. Ingrid Hoven from Ms. Ingrid Gabriela Hoven from the Managing Director of GIZ back on stage, together with Robert Wagner, who's the lead scientist of the German Environment Agency 𝐉𝐮𝐧𝐞 AI and Big Data Solutions Lab, the distinguished HPC professor Denis Trystram from the Grenoble IMP in RIA, and the panel will be moderated, but also he will contribute as a speaker by Max Schulze, Director of 𝐉𝐮𝐧𝐞. Thank you very much.
I think you can hear me, yeah. Before we start, I want to say that Ms. Hoven has to unfortunately go to the airport very quickly, so she won't be joining us on the panel. But to pick up on what she said, I think we hear the whole day already two different kinds of forces. The one force is the potential of what we can do with AI, especially in the field of climate. And the other force that we hear a lot is we need policies, we need interventions to make sure that we also manage the environmental impact. And I think we have also collaborated in CODIS, which sets a very good framework for this thinking. It's very important to remember, I'm a technologist, that AI technology in itself doesn't really have a direction. It's the values of an individual or a company that make the products that really define the direction, as well as regulation and economics. So my first question to both of you is, what guardrails do we need in place to make sure that this direction of AI is actually going into all these opportunities which we've heard a lot about today? Do you want to start, Dennis?
Okay, so hard question to start. I guess there is no miracle solution. Maybe if we see the way people are using AI models or the way people are developing these models, we can see that it's always the same way. The solutions to this problem, even if AI is developed for good for climate crisis, let's say, it's always the same thing. We are looking for this development first as a pure scientific technical problem. And then what we see after some point, we are doing LCA, attributional LCA and whatever, and we see that, okay, this is not that good as expected, so then we are trying to improve. Improvement is again a pure scientific way, and so on and so on. And this is somehow something that leads to rebound and to indirect effect. And a way to counter these effects is maybe to anticipate and to put some people who are maybe less technically oriented at the beginning of the development of these models, in order to be able to capture some systemic effect in advance, and then it's we can avoid a bit this systemic effect.
So instead of solving the issues of a technology with even more technology and software on top of software, it would be better to have a more interdisciplinary team up front thinking about what problem are we solving.
Exactly.
Yeah. Robert, what were you?
Maybe to add something, I heard it early this day on stage. You can't measure, or it's hard to measure or you can't manage what you can't measure. And I think this applies to this kind of problem. And working in an agency, you may think about like regulations and stuff. But for me and my group, we are trying to do actually AI. So we do research in improving the efficiency of models. We develop our own algorithms, and we are also interested in doing better when it comes to AI infrastructure. And by doing so, the learnings you can make is how to use these kind of technologies for good, for example. So In terms of sustainability applications, we have now access to quite good models in doing our job even better working in an environmental agency when it comes to analysis, geospatial analysis, also large language models. So in the end of the day, in my opinion, you have to start working with these kind of technologies, because otherwise it's hard to have a basis for a debate, let's say. And therefore, I'm looking forward for other groups also in governmental areas or in agencies that start doing, because it's about capacity building. So you need to have the people who are able to talk about this, because otherwise there's no direction also for a debate, because you can knock on the doors from the data centers, but there's a very, very low chance to get entrance. So therefore, I think we have to start doing, and to have also to show good examples what can be beneficial in terms of AI, and it can help.
Yeah, I think the capacity building aspect is really important. I think to at least be able to play with a technology and experience it and really understand what it can do and what it cannot do, I think is very helpful to have a useful discussion. You mentioned AI infrastructure, so I think we all know that the infrastructure that's currently running on, be it data centers or hardware, are not environmentally sustainable or friendly at the moment. How do you see the risk of an accelerated deployment of AI now into all these fields without having first managed how the infrastructure can be environmentally sustainable? Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, it's true what you said, but to be honest, we have to start at some point to think what we can actually do. What we are doing is we try to incorporate with people who are running data centers and to make them aware, and also the users aware of what this is going to create, let's say. So the rebound effects of using AI, we have discussed this morning already. It's important to be aware of, and also to try to improve that issue. But I think to make a difference, you have to start also showing where is potential to improve something. And we talked about heating, for example, about the dual use of these kind of infrastructures, and there is some sort of hope. But to be honest, digitization and also the use of AI, it will increase the energy consumption. And what we have to make clear at this point is, for what kind of purpose are we going to use AI and these kind of technologies? And this is way more important, in my opinion, than to improve the hardware. I think it's the usage and the inference that is important to talk about and to be improved.
Yeah, you could argue, though, that the makers of AI, of course, have an incentive to talk about the efficiency of the hardware and the infrastructure, because it might lead to a rebound effect, right? Which, again, increases consumption and not so much focus on the directionality. Dennis, I know you also think about data centers and how to think about the AI model, the software, all the layers together, and how to optimize that. What are you working on?
Yeah, so in my group we have a project on this, but first maybe I would like just to say I agree with what you said somehow. The needs or usage cannot be really defined. This is too complicated somehow. And another thing is about the side of the users is we have no obligation to use Gen AI or agentic AI, even worse, for every topic. We just take one model and customize on our data. So maybe there are a lot of other solutions that could achieve the same goal. So this is again something that we have to make people unable to choose the right one from the method itself. But at least, okay, now I'm coming from my project somehow. The idea is to build data centers using new features that are incorporated before running the data center itself. That means we just mentioned this morning also some open source development, obviously, but we have also to anticipate the resiliency. We have also to make people aware of what is in the software stack, that if there are any problem, they can control these and can change something in a better way if there are some problems on electricity and so on. So the idea is to give the power to people who are administrating the data centers.
Yeah, sounds very interesting. I'm curious what the audience is thinking about. So I'm wondering if somebody maybe has a question for us that we can answer on guardrails, infrastructure, or AI in general. No?
Maybe I can add something on that. We have a rule in our lab which is called be responsible in terms of creating AI and using AI. And I think this can be helpful for a discussion because we also try to benchmark ourselves. Once we have the infrastructure like cloud resources and the local high-performance computing system, you can start to measure what you are going to create by coding. So when it comes to the development of software, but also when it comes to the hosting and the inference. And then you can start to think about like having a dashboard and talking about something like credits, for example. What's your actual footprint by doing so? And also the assessment of the software lifecycle. What's the demand of energy during the training, for example, and during the inference, and also the model selection, for example. We, of course, in an agency have to deal a lot with large language models because most of our everyday work from our colleagues is related to textual work. And then it's important to see, okay, depending on the use case, there is a chance to pick the right model and to have some sort of savings in terms of the inference, for example. The same applies to computer vision, object detection, etc. And in our project that we are going to develop or that we are developing, we do this as our phase 0 approach, let's say. So we think about the use case, what are the users, what's the technological readiness of the users, and how can we be as efficient as possible to say, not only in terms of the training and the development, but also later on for the inference.
So basically, before you start a project, building on what you said in the beginning, you're doing an impact-benefit analysis.
Like an assessment, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but in fact, what you can capture with this is somehow only direct effects. You can even add to this LCA, you can add the materiality of what you are using. Okay, you take a part of a bigger model, you can take proportionally something, and you can assess in the right way, I agree. But it is only a very, very small part of what happens, actually. And what is really, really the hardest point, and maybe the hardest point to guess or to estimate, is indirect effect and rebound. And this, we need some other mechanism in order to control them. And this cannot be, again, a posteriori. It cannot be done after a model is developed. It has to be done before, think before.
I agree on what you said, but my point, or maybe I rephrase it a little bit. When you analyze the use case or the application itself, and you coming from an or you look at it from a technological perspective, then you can train the users and the people, and that's what we are doing, to convince them that they do not need a large language model for the application, but maybe something which is way more smaller, way more efficient. That's the reason why. Because people are reading in the newspapers somewhere else, there are large language models available, and that is going to solve my problem. And therefore, again, it's about culture, let's say, to empower the people to know what can I expect and what are the burdens, for example, and also the rebound effects. And what I see so far is in a lot of applications, people pick the very first models they stumble across. And often it's coming from OpenAI, ChatGPT, etc. But I think there is also something which is missing when you think about project design or development of such applications.
Sure. That means in the data center you should have some specialists, some experts who are helping people to find the right model. And sure, it is a way to think before.
I wonder though, like to me, I'm also a software engineer, so I understand the technical decision making there. But I'm always struck by the fact that normally economics dictates the use case, right? Normally you would say, I can't build this application unless I can show I have a financial benefit of X because the costs are so high. Of course, in AI, most of the costs are currently subsidized either by investors or by government aid to a certain degree. So do you think if we would bring cost back, that it would also introduce a level of constraint, that we don't try to go at every problem with AI, but one of the examples we heard earlier was using satellite imagery to figure out where there may be a crop issue. I think that's a high value problem to apply to, but would cost also help aside from just an LCA and an impact assessment?
Well, I think it could help, but I'm not sure if this solves the problem. Maybe I can phrase it like this, because talking about costs is also the question, how does the business model look like? And this is hard to answer, actually, especially since I'm from an agency. So talking about costs would mean that you know about the costs. And in a lot of cases, we do not know.
So it's probably the hardest point to, because at some point in companies, people are aware of the problem and they would like to align their own spirit into this pathway of the ecological transition somehow. So it's, I mean, from inside the companies, people are aware of this. So there is a kind of move on here. But okay, it's contradictory with the market right now. So market is a big issue, and as an academic, I cannot say too much about this.
Yeah, it was the last and the most provocative question of all. Thank you both for joining me for this panel. Yeah, and I think we're going to have lunch now, right? But I will bring Robin back to explain more about that. Thank you.
Well, thanks.